Hi there, and welcome to For Dragonflies and Me. My name is Jean Smith, and I'm the author of the blog For Dragonflies and Me, as well as your video host for this presentation on organic raised bed gardening. Before we get into the presentation, I thought I would share a little bit of my experience in both farming as well as home gardening. So cumulatively, I have over 35 years between farming professionally and being a regular little home gardener. During those years of professional farming, I attended several local farmers market where I was able to sell the produce that I grew on my farm. This was a wonderful experience that I just appreciated, and it has grown into so much more for me as now I have become a farmers market manager. So over the last few years, what started out as a hobby in home gardening turned into a profession. However, I no longer farm professionally anymore. I do still manage 2 farmers markets, and I also am the event manager for a large city. So now let's move into the presentation and get to why you're here. So why are you here? Well, I'm assuming you have some needs that you want to fulfill in the way of gardening, and you want some information with regards to organics and raised beds. So some of the questions you may be wondering and some issues you may be facing is, first off, you don't want to till up a large area of your yard to commit to a garden. You also may not want to find the time or make the time, or you may not have the time to weed. Weeding a conventional garden is very time consuming. You also may want to look into organics because you don't want to use harsh chemicals on your food crops. Also, watering could be an issue depending on where you live. You may have a concern for conserving water, which we will touch on in this video presentation as well. Let's first understand what it means to be organic. According to the Free Dictionary by Farflex, to garden organically is basically farming or gardening without artificial fertilizers or pesticides. Organic farming involves manuring with plant or animal waste and the biological control of pests and weeds. For the home gardener, there are a lot of options for you, and we're going to discuss those here in the next upcoming slides. Let's look at companion planting, which is an important element with organic gardening, whether you be farming or just home gardening. So this book by Louise Riot, Carrots Love Tomatoes, gives you information with regards to every plant, flower, herb, tree, shrub that could possibly be used in companion planting. Many people think that you can just plant any vegetable you want in your gardens and they'll all do fine and great as long as you water them and take care of them. Well, that is actually a very big misconception. There are several things that should not be planted near to each other because they actually hinder proper growth and maturation and production. So what are those and why? Well, first off, how many of you have seen people planting marigolds in their garden and thought, oh, that's so lovely? Well, it is very aesthetically appealing. However, there is a real good reason for planting them that is pertaining to the prevention of bugs. Marigolds stink. Most people don't like the way they smell either, but there are a lot of bugs that are absolutely repulsed by them. Some of those are beetles as well as some worms that are hindering to your plants. Another food crop that should not be planted together are anything in the allium family, which are onions and garlic, and the legume family, which are your beans and your peas. Those things planted together hinder proper growth. The chemical that the onions or the allium family release through their roots get absorbed by the legume roots and actually yellow them and cause them to not produce as well. This book is literally my Bible as far as companion planting, and I recommend it 100%. Another element that is really important to somebody who wants to garden organically is avoiding the harsh chemicals on your food crops. This fertilizer, Neptune's Harvest liquid fish fertilizer, is something I swear by. This is a link to an article I wrote for the Detroit News, the Good Life blog, and it gives a lot more detail as how to use the fertilizer as well as benefits of it. It is a foliar spray, which means that you're spraying it over the plants, and the plants take in the nutrients through the pores of the leaves. And I used to always joke around with my market customers across the table and say, you can spray this on and stand back and just watch your plants grow. It is an incredible resource that all home gardeners should have in their toolbox. A couple other things I thought I would touch on as far as alternatives to harsh chemicals to kill insects is diatomaceous earth. Diatomaceous earth is simply a granular substance that is organically harvested. It's minerals and rocks, and it aids your soil and helps feed your plants, but in the meantime, it also kills bugs. And the way it does that is by soft body bugs such as slugs, snails, anything like that crawl across it. The particles in the diatomaceous earth actually slices the underbody of the bug to where it kills it. So that is a really, really wonderful alternative to a pesticide. Another alternative to a pesticide would be your household organic flour that you would use in baking for cupcakes, bread, whatever. But what you do with that is you take a sifter and you sprinkle it over the leaves of your plants, especially your brassicas, which is your broccoli, your cauliflower, cabbages. And so for the soft body bugs, the cabbage worms that will get onto those. Also, your tomato plants for your tomato hornworm, and anything that would get that type of bug, potatoes for the potato bug. And what happens is, while the insects are chewing away at the precious leaves on your plants, they are also eating the flour, which in turn gums up their systems and they literally suffocate. Bad for the bug, good for the gardener. An alternative to other problems in your gardens, for instance, blossom end rot, which you would get on your tomatoes. And this is when a tomato, the bottoms, if you've ever had tomato plants and they're growing and the bottom of the tomato starts to turn black and it's really ugly, and you're so frustrated because it actually rots the entire plant on the inside. Well, simply by applying calcium to the soil, this takes care of it completely. All blossom end rot is a calcium deficiency. Easy fix. Again, there are so many alternatives, and I do not have enough time to get into all of those, but these are a few items that I thought I would touch base on. Now on to raised beds and the actual physical elements of them. Raised beds can first and foremost be any size you want, with a few stipulations. First off, you never, ever, ever, under any circumstances, want to make your raised beds wider than 4 feet. The reason you don't want to is because you never want to have to walk or step into your raised beds. What happens is the soil gets compacted and there's it prevents proper aeration. Your worms can't get through the soil, helping to create the aeration, and it is just not healthy for the soil, for the roots of the plants as well. So 4 feet is the max width. Length, whatever you want. Standard is 4x4 for the home gardener, 4x8, 4x10. These are actual photographs of my raised beds. This was my salad crop garden, and this is where I grew a lot of the onions and several lettuces and whatnot. But you can see these beds are about 8 inches, 10 inches high. This is the next element for your raised beds, is the depth. For proper root growth, 10 inches. 8 inches is the absolute minimum. 10 to 12 is ideal. However, one thing with raised beds is you can really make them any height that you want. If you want to build them up onto cinder blocks or with wooden legs, you can make them to where they're waist level, to where you can stand at them, or just even a little higher to where if you have like a garden bench or work stool, that you can sit on that. So those are variations that you can play with on your own for your raised beds. However, again, don't make them wider than 4 feet, but you can make them more narrow. Another aspect of the raised beds and when you're creating your garden is what are you going to put your raised beds on? You can put, if you are only going to do like 1 or 2 raised beds, you can simply buy the standard black plastic ground cover that you can get at any garden home supply, lay it down on your grass, that will kill it, and then place your raised bed on top of that landscape fabric. Then you fill it up with all of your materials, which we'll touch on in a little bit. So again, this is very, very easy. The construction of them is simple and the materials are very easy to acquire. I want to share these next few photos real briefly just to give you an idea of what raised beds look like when they're freshly built, as well as what they look like being mulched, and then some beautiful produce that is grown in them. But the main photograph that I want to touch on here is primarily the center one, where you can see an example of companion planting as well as the mulching. So you can see that I have 2 crops here, garlic and peppers, which are going to grow together. The key here is the mulching. When I planted these beds, I make my furrows and I plant the seeds in those. Then I used grass clippings or you can use straw to mulch right up to the edges of the furrows where those seeds are. Once the seeds have germinated, then I start tucking in the grass clippings or the straw around their little stems to protect them and to keep the moisture in. This is so key to the elimination of weeding and maintaining moisture. And so we're going to continue on now and look at a few other aspects and benefits of raised bed gardens. Let's recap some of the benefits of raised bed gardening. First and foremost, it takes up so much less space and there is no tilling involved. Number one. Secondly, it almost eliminates the need for weeding and minimizes the amount of watering that you must do. The raised bed gardens allow even the novice gardener or the experienced gardener to garden with ease. It also is very flexible in the way of size and height. And taking into consideration the height, this is also very beneficial for people who may have some physical limitations. I've included this link to a blog that I found with a really good how to build raised beds inexpensively. And so I want to provide this to you because obviously I don't have enough time in this presentation to give you a step-by-step instructions of how to. So this was something I reviewed and I would definitely recommend.